Explore Derceto Manson as Private Eye Edward Carnby or Emily Hartwood and attempt to uncover the secrets surrounding Emily's Uncle Jeremy in 2024's revival of the classic 90s franchise, Alone in the Dark. Welcome everyone to another Sergeant Sentinel gaming review video. I'm SSG, aka Sergeant Sentinel, and today we're discussing Alone in the Dark. But before we continue, I want to say thanks if you're watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. Hit that like button if you enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to hit that bell icon so you can be notified when I upload new content, whether it's live streams or new game review videos. For those of you that don't know, Alone in the Dark is a survival horror game with puzzle elements, and much like the original back in the 90s, you can choose between the two characters, Detective Carnby or Emily Hartwood. For this playthrough, which was done on PlayStation 5, I played as Detective Edward Carnby. Now, developed by Pieces Interactive and published by THQ Nordic, Alone in the Dark is a survival horror game with puzzle elements that released March 20th, 2024, like I said, for PlayStation 5, but also for Windows and for Xbox Series consoles. The original Alone in the Dark was set in the 1920s. This game is set in the 1930s, and it feels almost like a remake of the original. They really wanted to capture the feel that the original Alone in the Dark game back in the 90s had, and for the most part they succeed. However, as other franchises that have survived since the 90s have evolved, Alone in the Dark really hasn't evolved, and I think that's something that worked against it significantly. Now, I'll expand upon that in a minute. I don't want to make that the focus right now. Instead, we'll talk about positives that the game has. The atmosphere. The atmosphere that it establishes pretty much right from the start is creepy. It's not as creepy as something like Resident Evil 2, obviously, but it does establish an atmosphere of uncertainty, of mystery, and playing your way through the different levels and stages that this has. This actually has 5 chapters, but some of the chapters are a little longer than others. You see yourself trying to solve puzzles, putting the pieces together mentally, and just trying to figure out what the hell is going on, especially since you're hired by Emily Hartwood to figure out what the deal is with her Uncle Jeremy. Now, this place, obviously, it says it's for those that are mentally exhausted, which I guess is a nice way of saying an insane asylum where they don't put you in straitjackets. And some of the characters that you encounter in this game, they do seem a little off their rocker, but it's nowhere near as crazy as some of the hallucinations that your character experiences, and some of the places he or she, depending on who you play as they end up going through. Now, obviously, my first playthrough was as Detective Carnby, and some of these areas he goes to are not only pertaining to the fears and the internal turmoil that Jeremy is going through, but it goes back to Detective Carnby's past. And I think this is a good touch, showing that what he's perceiving is not just Jeremy's own internal struggles, but they're his own internal struggles. And it obviously leans heavily on Lovecraftian horror, I think. And for fans of that type of content or that type of lore, they're going to enjoy some of the enemies and some of the levels that you have to navigate through. Now, obviously, the levels are pretty rooted in realism as far as being like actual locations. One's in the desert, one's in the Arctic. So it's not like they're completely off the wall crazy. Like I said, the settings themselves are pretty grounded in reality, so to speak. It's just stuff that happens in these levels, and the characters that you have to meet and the enemies you have to defeat, they're a little strange. Now, the combat is interesting because you can basically go back and forth between melee attacks and firearm-based attacks. The melee attacks are actually pretty cool because they do a lot of damage, and if you're getting surrounded, sometimes that is the way to go, especially since it takes time for your character to reload weapons, and with the weapons being a double-barrel shotgun, a revolver, and a Tommy gun that has 20 rounds in a magazine. If you're getting overwhelmed and you're trying to engage enemies with gunfire, sometimes you can get completely surrounded and you're not going to be able to survive just because, again, it takes time to reload. So I think in that aspect, the fact that they allow you to pick up melee weapons and use it as one of your biggest ways to combat some of these enemies and get out of difficult situations is definitely a good thing. It gives you basically a lifeline almost. And melee weapons, when you're going to be experiencing combat with some of these enemies, melee weapons can be found scattered throughout the level, and that's a nice touch. Also, another nice touch that this game adds is whenever you pick up notebooks or things that you can examine that has writing on them, such as someone's journal entry, it's narrated by that character that this item belongs to. And so it kind of adds backstory to what you're going through and what you're trying to figure out. It gives you an insight into some of these characters' thoughts and motivations, and it does add some much needed depth to this game. The puzzles as well are pretty well thought out, and some of them are kind of simple, some of them are more complex, and they require you to really mull it over in your head. Really think about what the puzzle is supposed to look like versus what it looks like right now. These puzzles, most of them are pretty easy. Some of them were a little challenging. They were nowhere near as hard as some of the puzzles that I've encountered in other games, so that's cool. And because this game has like 4 different difficulty levels, with I think story or easy being the easiest one, obviously focused on story mode, if you're a gamer that doesn't have exceptional skills, you can still play this game and enjoy it and be able to navigate it from start to finish. Even the final boss is pretty simple, and although they throw a number of enemies at you, you're still going to be able to defeat this boss. Now, obviously, I'm trying to avoid any spoilers with this, so I'm not really going to go into what kind of boss it is or anything that happens in the end game, but just know that this game is interesting, but it's still pretty approachable by gamers of a number of different skill levels. Now that we have the good out of the way, let's start discussing some of the things that are not so good about this game. And to be perfectly clear up front, I did not enjoy this game anywhere near as much as I thought I would, or as much as I enjoyed other survival horror games. So I did finish this game, obviously, but I just didn't enjoy it anywhere near as much as I did of other games in the genre, especially according to 2024's standards. And I think that's why this game failed. Now, obviously, this is a game review. It's about my own personal experience with this game. But I think it's important to let you know, the viewer of this video, that this game, the sales were so underwhelming that THQ Nordic actually closed Pieces Interactive, the developer of this game, after this game released. So Pieces Interactive is no more, thanks to THQ Nordic saying, hey, you know what, this game just didn't live up to our expectations, so you guys are fired. And I think 10 or 15 years ago they could have avoided that, but with how competitive 2024 is as far as gaming goes, these studios that just don't do well enough aren't going to survive. And unfortunately, Pieces Interactive was one of those, and it's because Alone in the Dark was nowhere near as good as they needed it to be, and it's because they leaned a little too heavily on how these types of games used to play and used to be versus how they need to be in 2024. Now, do I think people should play this game? Yeah, I think it's worth playing. at least once. Do I think everybody's going to like it? No. Do I think some people might like it more than others? Yes, definitely. Especially, like I said, if you like the Lovecraftian type of horror stuff, then you're going to like some of these enemies, and you're going to like the design of some of these levels. It'll speak to you, and you'll be like, you know what, hey, this game is actually pretty cool. But I'd probably say for 60% of gamers, it's going to range from liking it moderately to not liking it at all. So that's just something that I wanted to, I just wanted to get it out there so that you have realistic expectations if you do pick this up on sale, or if you do happen to acquire this from, whether you rent it or wherever you get it from, so that you know going in what you're going to be experiencing. Now, another thing I wanted to mention about this game is that I didn't really encounter any technical issues, no bugs, no glitches. But again, this is, I played this in late September of this year and it launched in March. So at launch, it could have had those. I can't speak whether it did at launch, but as of right now, it doesn't. Now, the price point for this game, I would say probably is this $20 to $25 range. If you get it cheaper than that, that's cool. If you want to play it through GameFly, that's cool. I would recommend doing that as well. But overall, if I had to give this game a rating, I'd probably say maybe 6 out of 10. It's not bad, it's just not exceptional. So if you're into this type of game, check it out, but definitely not at full price. Anyway, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about this. Did you play Alone in the Dark? What did you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Are you a fan of the franchise? And were you disappointed hearing that the developers got, they got the axe because it wasn't good enough? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit that like button. I greatly appreciate it. This is SSG, aka Sergeant Sentinel. Take it easy, gamers.